Hey, what is up guys? My name is True Underdog, here today with a guide on how to play Alex. This guide will cover his special moves, normal attacks, V-trigger, V-skill, and V-reversal. So without further ado, let's break him down step by step. So first off, we're going to go ahead and talk about his normals. Now Alex has a good advantage of having very long reaching normals, much longer than a lot of characters in the cast. Now the downside is that most of these normals actually don't combo. In fact, the only crouching normal he has that actually combos are his jabs and light kicks. So he can do jab jab, or he can do light kick into jab. Those are really his only options for comboing off of crouching normals. That kinda sucks, but the upside is you have really good normals that have very good range and really stick it to the opponent. And to make things even better, pretty much all of these normals are safe or plus. The only moves that are not safe are obviously his sweep and his standing heavy punch if he's close enough. That's also unsafe. His crouching medium kick if done at point blank is also technically unsafe. It's -3, but most characters cannot punish that, and even if they can, it requires frame perfect timing from the opponent, so it's not likely to happen. So with frame data out of the way, let's go ahead and discuss why these normals are useful. Standing light punch has decent range and is also a pretty solid anti-air if your timing is on point. That being said, it is a light punch, so it will lose to certain other jump-ins, like a heavy kick, or just certain characters who have really good hitboxes. It's also good for comboing into his special moves on hit. Another great tool is that on block or hit, it's great for what's called a tick throw. So basically what you do is you do a light punch and it leaves you at advantage. On block, you're at +2, and since Alex's command grabs are 6 frames, this makes it much harder for your opponent to escape after being hit or blocking the attack. Crouching light punch has more of the same properties, although it will not combo into special moves, so keep that in mind. If you want a combo, you gotta do standing light punch. However, it's equally good for doing things like tick throws. Now, standing medium punch is an amazing normal. It may not seem like it because the range isn't that great, but it's +2 on block, meaning it's a great offensive tool. Not to mention it has really good priority and beats out a lot of attacks, making it great for frame traps and just great for the neutral game in general. If your opponent sticks out a limb, you can catch him with this and get a full combo, as it combos into the light slash fairly easy. Now the crouching version, as mentioned earlier, doesn't actually combo, but it has amazing range and a very true hitbox. Basically the very tip of your fingers are what actually hit. So it's not like other characters where you have to get your knee to actually hit the person, like see right here my foot's going through him but I'm not actually hitting him. Not true with crouching medium punch. If those fingers connect, it's a hit, which is pretty freaking awesome. Next we have standing heavy punch. This move is actually -3 if used up close, so it's not technically safe on block. That being said, it has pretty dang good range for a heavy, and leads into some good damage, especially on counter hit. I'm gonna go ahead and use Alex's V-skill and show that off. We'll get into it more later, but Alex's V-skill makes his next hit become a counter hit. If you land a counter hit heavy punch, it leads into a heavy flash, which then leads into a command grab, so it's a lot of damage if you land that counter hit. Crouching heavy punch is an okay anti-air, but in my opinion, not as good as standing light punch. It will trade fairly often. However, what it is good for is getting free damage off of some of Alex's special moves, like his anti-air. Alrighty, so now it's time for the kicks. So standing light kick is pretty good for frame traps, but it won't combo without a counter hit. So typically you still want to use standing light punch to go for frame traps and counter hits. Although it does have pretty dang decent range, and it is still safe on block. Now the crouching version is actually Alex's only means of comboing off of a low, so keep that in mind. It's a good way to keep your opponent blocking low, that way you can get him with the overheads later on. Next we have standing medium kick. This attack has pretty amazing range, and it's good for the neutral, right? If you're playing the footsie game and you want to trade with your opponent, this is a pretty dang solid move, and it's safe on block, so there's no risk to ever really throw it out there. Same with crouching medium kick. Hits low, has pretty good range, and keeps your opponent in check, has them blocking low every now and then, so you can hit him with the overhead when the time comes. And last but not least, we have heavy kick. So heavy kick has pretty amazing range and is -4, so at max distance, pretty much no character can punish it. And on counter hit, it leads into a crush crumple, which means you can get some pretty good combos afterward. The crouching version is obviously a sweep, which has pretty dang good range and pretty good startup. It's very unsafe on block, but on counter hit will cause a hard knockdown. Now before we discuss his jumping normals, let's go ahead and cover his unique attacks real quick. So first off we have the lariat. This attack is very plus on hit, allowing you to combo after it. And in fact, it's even +3 on block, making it great for tick throw setups, especially on block. You can still go for it on hit, but it's even deadlier on block, since your opponent is forced to guess between the frame trap, which leads into a combo, or the hyper bomb, which is a lot of free damage. It's honestly a pretty scary mix-up. Lariat can also be a decent anti-air, but only if your reads are on point. If you do it too late, it will actually trade with certain jump-ins, so just keep that in mind. And then you have the chop, which is a pretty simple and basic overhead. It's not safe if you do it at point blank, so you want to space it properly, but it's still a pretty decent overhead. It's a bit telegraphed and not very fast, but it's still a nice option to have. Last but not least, let's go ahead and discuss his jump-ins. So Alex doesn't really have very many. His jump-ins don't tend to be that good, some of them are downright atrocious, but let's go ahead and talk about him anyway. So jumping light kick is your only decent cross-up. It's also good for tick throws. On hit or block, it's a good way to sneak in a command grab if your opponent's not expecting it. If they do expect it, then trade in some jabs instead, and in fact, combine the two. Go for a cross-up, go for a jab, and then still attempt the tick throw. You want to sneak in command grabs as much as you possibly can, because then you're going to bait out shoryukens and reversals from your opponent and get crush counter combos. Jumping medium kick and jumping light punch are both decent air-to-airs, but playing Alex, I recommend going for the anti-airs instead. It's just a better option in my opinion. And then you have the heavies. So jumping heavy kick has some pretty dang crazy range, and some pretty good hit stun too, so it leads into combos. Jumping heavy punch has a better vertical hitbox, and has about the same hit stun, so it's still a great option. I find myself doing heavy kick a lot more often, but either one is acceptable and a good way to start off combos and keep pressure going. Last but not least, we have down plus heavy punch. This is unique to Alex. It's very unsafe if blocked. It's not a very good option most of the time. It does go over projectiles, and it can catch an opponent off guard every now and then. But if it's blocked, your opponent gets their most damaging combo possible, because it has so much recovery on it. The upside, if it does hit, you get a combo. So I guess there's that, but this move is going to be very rarely seen. I've actually never once seen it at a tournament. It's just really, really risky. Alrighty dogs, that wraps up his normal attacks, so let's go ahead and move into his special moves. First off, we have the Flash Chop. Now every version of the Flash Chop has the same startup and is -4 on block, with the exception of the EX version, which is actually safe and starts up the fastest. So the only reason to do each version is for range and startup. So the light version is the fastest, but has the shortest range, whereas the medium version has better range, but is a bit slower on startup, and the heavy version has the best range, but is the slowest on startup. Also, if the heavy chop connects, it leads into a command grab. Another awesome addition is they have projectile hitboxes, meaning if timed properly, you can just smack projectiles away. Now the nice thing about the EX version is that because it's faster and has great range, it combos off attacks that normally wouldn't combo, like standing light kick. Next we have the Slash Elbow. Now the light version is actually safe on block, and has decent range. Now it is a charge move, so keep that in mind. If you're not a charge character, it's going to be a bit hard to utilize it properly. So just keep practicing and eventually it'll become second nature to always be charging. Now unlike Flash Chop, the medium version actually is unsafe on block. It does have much better range though. Same goes for the heavy version. Better range, but also unsafe on block. So just always keep that in mind. If you want to stay safe, only the light version is actually safe. It's -3, so certain characters can still punish it, but it requires frame perfect timing, so chances are it's not going to happen, especially online. And just like Flash Chop, it also has a projectile hitbox, so it will actually knock away projectiles and nullify them. Now the EX version is where things get interesting. It actually has 2 hits of armor, not immediately on startup, but around frame 3 or 7, I forget which one. The point is, it's not a wake-up attack, but it is a way around projectiles if you see one come out. So just keep that in mind. It also works on normal moves as well, so it's honestly just an all-around great move as long as the opponent isn't immediately attacking you on wake-up. It's honestly just a really solid option, and I love it. But also keep in mind it's the most unsafe out of any of the versions, so if your opponent does block it, you're going to eat a combo. Next we have the Air Knee Smash. So this is a pretty good anti-air, but it will trade if you don't do it early enough, so keep that in mind. Each version has a different arc, So the heavy version has like the steepest arc, the light version is for opponents who are more directly above you, and the medium is somewhere in the middle. Now the EX version is basically good for almost any situation, so I find myself using that version the most, as it is the most reliable. It's also a great way to end combos, and it does the most damage. Alrighty, so next up we have the Air Stampede. Every version of this attack is unsafe, except for the EX version. And like the Flash Chop, each strength has a different range. So the light version is for opponents that are right in front of you, the medium version is for about jumping distance, and then the heavy version is for much farther opponents. It's not quite full screen, but it's almost full screen. And while it is -5 and that's kinda hard to punish, it's still a very, very risky move to just throw out there. If the opponent does block, you're gonna eat a lot of damage. That being said, it's an instant overhead in some cases, and it's very scary for opponents who aren't constantly blocking high, right? If they like to crouch block, it's a pretty good move to have in your arsenal. Now the EX version is where things get interesting. So by default, it's about this far, so about jumping distance. But if you hold forward, it becomes almost full screen. Not quite, right? You see I landed right in front of Ken's face. But if you hold forward during the animation, it's almost full screen. Whereas if I hold back during the animation, it's nearly right in front of me. Sorry, I messed up there. Boink. There you go. It's basically right in front of me if I hold back. So you have 3 different distances with a single EX version. And the EX version is actually +2. So not only is it safe, but you're actually at frame advantage after landing it, even if it's blocked. And then there's Head Crush Charge. So this attack is actually an unblockable command grab, and each version has better range but slower startup. So the medium version is about jumping distance, and heavy version is about almost full screen. So it's almost identical to the range of the Stampede, except now it's unblockable. That being said, the opponent can jump straight up and get a full punish on you. So the idea of these attacks is to mix up between the stomp and the command grab. If you mix up the attacks properly, your opponent's not going to know what to do in each situation. Just like EX Stampede, the EX Head Crush has 3 different versions. By default, it's that distance. But if I hold back during the animation, it's basically right in front of me, and if I hold forward during the animation, it's almost full screen. Whoop, messed up again. There we go. Now in my opinion, this attack is great for punishing projectiles, because it's almost instant. Unless you're fighting a character like Guile who recovers right away, it's a pretty good way to deal with projectiles. Last but not least, we have the Power Bomb, a 6-frame command grab. Now, each version does pretty good damage, but what you're sacrificing is the range. So the light version has the best range, the medium version is a little bit less, and the heavy version is the least. But the higher up you go, the more damage you get. So the heavy version obviously does the most damage. Now the EX version does an absurd amount of damage, has pretty dang good range, and does a lot of stun, and that's honestly the scariest part, is the stun. If you can sneak this attack in somewhere, your opponent's going to be very scared, because look at that. That's like 1/5 of the stun bar right then and there. So if I had comboed into that, the opponent's dealing with a lot of stun. Look at that, we're already halfway off one mix-up. So that's some pretty crazy stuff. And like before, we talked about tick grabs. Those are very good for command grabs, especially Alex's. Now the last special move is very situational, but it's his power drop. This happens after you land a heavy flash chop, or after his V trigger, so right here. The EX version does way more damage and a lot more stun, but sometimes it's better not to spin the meter, because depending how long your combo is, it's actually not worth it to spin the bar because of damage scaling. So just keep that in mind. If it's a short combo, go ahead and do the EX, but if not, go ahead and save your meter. Alrighty, so that sums up his special moves, so let's go ahead and talk about his V system. So first off, we have Alex's V skill. As we stated earlier, this turns every hit into a counter hit, and that's a big deal in a lot of cases, because now moves that wouldn't combo suddenly do. So all of his light attacks now combo into his light chop, his medium attacks combo into his medium chop, and most importantly, his heavy attacks combo into his heavy chop, which leads into his power drop. On top of that, he gets a crush counter for free now, which is pretty crazy. Now keep in mind, if you get hit, this counter hit actually goes away. So in other words, you gotta use the V skill again if you want a counter hit. It also makes his cross-up light kick a lot easier to combo into, so that's a plus as well. Alex's V reversal knocks the opponent pretty far away, which isn't the best thing for grapplers, but it is a good way to escape the corner. And since Alex's V trigger only takes 2 bars, that means you can do 2 V reversals in the same round and still have enough left over for his V trigger near the end. Last but not least, we have Alex's V trigger, which is a bit complicated. Now at the bare minimum, it's an easy way to extend your combos and get a free power drop. However, if you hold down the attack, it actually extends your range, and when fully held down, it actually breaks the opponent's guard and allows you to go for a free backdrop. But that's not all. It also doubles as a parry, which is a good way to counter your opponent and go for a free mix-up afterward. It can even parry entire supers. Plus, each time it parries an attack, you actually get to extend your V-trigger gauge, meaning you can keep it going for much longer if your parries are on point. It's a parry, and a guard break, and a way to extend combos. That being said, the sledgehammer attack itself that I'm doing right now is actually unsafe unless you fully charge it, in which case it breaks the guard. So don't just do it raw. You want to either combo into it, or use it fully charged. Otherwise, it is a huge gamble. Last but not least, we have Alex's super. Despite how much damage Alex normally does, this super doesn't really do that much. And in fact, when you combo into it, it has heavy damage scaling, meaning it's not usually worth it. The only time I recommend using Alex's super is to win the match. Otherwise, you're best off saving your meter. Now the one upside is it can combo on airborne opponents. So I guess there's that. Alrighty dogs, the button translations are in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this guide and found it helpful, please leave a like down below. And while you're down there, go ahead and post a comment too. Tell me what you think. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos, because we have content on this channel every single week. It is never a dull moment on Underdog Gaming. So make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.